Hello, hello. Round three. If you happen to have been awake for any of the prior streams. Today, for this workshop, we'll be doing GitHub Copilot. So if you don't have access to it, you will be working on getting access today. And then we'll show you a little bit about what you can do with it. For those of you who have never joined before, welcome. My name is Cecilia. Jump ahead really quickly, but actually, no, we don't. But I am a coach here at Major League Hacking, and it seems like I'm doing the gamut of streams today, which is fine. You're seeing lots of good content, lots of different things you can use in your hacks. If you go to hackathons or just in your side projects as you're going about building a portfolio. Now, Copilot is pretty versatile, and if you're not familiar with it, it is a generative AI chatbot of sorts, where it'll help you with your code just a little bit better than ChatGPT and a couple of other ones out there. But with how my workshops go, I always encourage questions. I really want to make sure that current you who is watching it, or future you who may be watching this over again later, or people who haven't made it to the actual stream themselves for a variety of reasons, they'll benefit from getting a chance to have questions asked. And sometimes sometimes we can figure it out, and sometimes we will instruct you on how to figure it out. So this is only an hour workshop, so we'll go ahead and get started. As if you want to preempt yourself or know that downloading will take a while, go ahead and download Visual Studio Code if you don't already have it. You can also, of course, use your preferred IDE like IntelliJ or NeoVim if those are your preferences. You're still welcome to follow along to the best of your ability. I just won't be able to help as much, so I'll do my best. But yeah. So if you haven't checked in by now, please go do so that way you can get all the things that you'll need for this workshop, at least as far as stickers go and points and your daily count. But yeah. Let's make sure we're good. Yes. Okay. So to get us started, Copilot is a chance to do wonderful things with it, which is, you can code with it, you can have it as a pair programmer, it can start to explain things, and you can also use it in a variety of different IDEs, such as Visual Studio Code or IntelliJ or others. And so for this workshop, we're going to go a little into why you might use it. We'll set it up for you, and then we'll actually go ahead and try it out. So as for what Copilot is, I'd mentioned that it was an AI pair programmer. It can help you understand code, but it can also help you generate and debug things. Small caveat here, AI is not perfect, and so there is a chance it may introduce bugs that you have to debug later. So we'll talk about ways to make sure that you can preempt that, so that way everything is as smooth sailing as it can possibly be, especially knowing that everyone's coming at different levels of experience and different backgrounds that really kind of change how you might interact with the chatbot as you progress in your developer journey. But as you can see from here on the bottom, it looks like you can create a new button component. You can fix broken things, and you can also have it explain things. And these are some of the commands that we'll be using today. So as for why you should use Copilot, there are folks who, in working with Copilot, have found that it helps them achieve a flow state better, which is generally that you stop having to stop and Google things, figure things out, and you can just go ahead and make things happen, which as you gain experience, this will certainly happen, but as you start working with new libraries, new tools, new methods, etc., that can tend to slow you down. And so as a result, Copilot can help you achieve a flow state that much faster. So something that could be 24 frustrating hours over the course of a few days at work or otherwise could turn into a flow state in which you're able to generate code effectively, more confidently, etc., that might help you achieve things that much faster. So as we're setting it up, you can put Copilot just about anywhere that you write code. And so in line with XKCD this week, if you're not familiar, it's a very fun little comic about various STEM degrees and the fun little backgrounds that they do. But here is a programming one where pretty much everyone has their preference and everyone likes to start a fight about it. But everybody uses their own IDE, text editor, etc. It's very much dependent on what you do and who you work with and what their preferences are as well. So while I may be using Visual Studio Code, you can also use GitHub Copilot in Visual Studio, in Vim, in NeoVim, and even through the GitHub CLI or the command line interface. So with that, like I said, we are going to be working with Visual Studio Code. So if you don't have that, go ahead and download it. But again, if you have any of the preceding ones I just mentioned, then we can keep going. And you can try and use it there as well. But with Visual Studio Code, I already have the Copilot extension installed. But if you're not familiar with Visual Studio Code, you can type in Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P, depending on what type of OS you're currently on. Or if you prefer to use visual interfaces, you can go to this bottom left where the block is floating away from other blocks. That will be the extension, like library or shop, if you will. And so once you get there, you're going to go ahead and search for GitHub Copilot in the marketplace, where then you'll go ahead and select install. Of course, make sure that it's the right one. Make sure it's hosted by GitHub. I know there's plenty of different ones out there, but specifically you want GitHub Copilot, the pair programmer. And once you get it installed, it will tell you that you may need to pay for it. And the wonders of being with MLH and with being a student is that you actually can get it for free through the GitHub Student Developer Pack. Brief pause to basically say, I really love the GitHub Student Developer Pack. This is not just me saying, oh my gosh, like anything our sponsors do is great. This is an especially resourceful little thing. It has access to so much more than just Copilot, though that is the focus of this workshop. There's access to courses, tutorials, trial runs for various online education systems if you find that you want more support. There's also sometimes a first-time like cloud credit amount. I don't know if that's still the case, but I know once upon a time ago I got free Azure credit. And there's plenty of other resources like databases, or if you want, let's say, get access on your iPad, which I didn't realize was a thing. I found out it was a thing, realized I had to pay for it. And then they're like, but by the way, if you have the Student Developer Pack, you can actually get this for free. And I'm like, oh, I have the Student Developer Pack. I can get on my iPad for free. And so there are a lot of partners that GitHub works with to ensure that students have as many resources as possible for anything they may do. And that list is always changing and always growing. So definitely check back on the Student Developer Pack offerings. But the main one, like I said, that we are talking about today is the Student Developer Pack. So if you are a student, and that means boot camp, community college, high school, university, etc., you should be able to have access to this pack by going to the new link actually is the same, but I believe it's, let me double check. I have some updates I didn't quite do. But if you go to hackpack/pack, and if not, there's also this link, same place, but it will take you to get access to the Student Developer Pack. I do already have access, so I won't be able to walk you through it just now, but it will require that you have a GitHub account and that you have a valid student indicator. This can be that you have an ID card. If your ID card does not have an expiration date on it, then you may need to resubmit your access once they reject you to say, we can't tell if you're a student, by submitting your current semester transcript or a picture of like your current semester schedule that includes like your username, basically anything to identify that it's you. I've usually had to do a resubmission because my ID card doesn't have an expiration date. But you would be picking that you are a student, or if you are attending, here as a teacher, you can also get access to GitHub Classroom. But as a student, you get access to a variety of things. You will need to make sure that the GitHub that you are using does have your student email on it. Otherwise, you will not be eligible. So with those in mind, we'll keep going. But by having access to the student pack, you will therefore have access to Copilot. You may need to sign in and sign out of GitHub on Visual Studio Code for it to process and realize that you do in fact have access to it. But should you have any issues with running, with like getting it hooked up, there's always the MLH Discord where you can drop your questions there, especially any errors you're running into. So that way, like the community can help out, or if you'd like to open a ticket, that's also available to you. All right. So again, you can watch this workshop at any time on YouTube. So if I run on ahead and you seem to be lost or you wish you could go back, just don't forget that this is for being recorded. It is going to be accessible on YouTube through Major League Hacking on our user after. And so I highly encourage that maybe you watch this over again if you find that you're confused, but also, again, I encourage you to ask questions while you're here, just in case that might help somebody else in the future or even your future self. Now, with getting GitHub Copilot ready, there is a wonderful feature that comes with Visual Studio Code that I will show you just now. I have Visual Studio Code actually pulled up and ready to go. All I need to do is just open a new window, and then I want to go ahead and select Clone Git Repo, which you can see right now, it's not showing me the little welcome page. I wonder if I can open it back up. Yep. And so I'll go ahead and click Clone Git Repo. I will have to click Clone from GitHub before I continue, unless I happen to have the exact URL, which I don't. But I do have the repository name, which is mlh/copilot starter. And I'll go ahead and do Copilot starter. And as you can see, it's pulling up and it's telling us that it's a basic Flask web app to demonstrate the functionality of GitHub Copilot. Now, if you're not familiar with Flask, that's okay. That is actually one of the wonderful benefits of Copilot, in that we can get you onboarded to what that is and what it means. And so right now it is cloning. Yes, go ahead and open in a new window. And if we open the README, it tells us more about it, what to do with it, and how to run this. But we're actually going to jump straight into the app.py. And let me just make sure that this is good to go, so that way when we alt tab into it, we can see everything that we're doing. Come on, show me the little, there we go. Alrighty, so continuing on. Unfortunately, no, not that I'm aware of. This is a sad thing that I always have to mention, is that I'm not aware of if there are any new developer benefits. It is really rough out there when you're not a student. Yeah, I'm sorry. But that might be something worth opening a ticket about or asking in the Discord in case somebody else has any resources that they've found. We do have a number of folks here in the MLH community who are not actively students. They are in the process of transitioning, but having to do it on their own time and not pay for school for a variety of reasons. So there might be somebody who has more resources than I can offer you at this time, particularly with regards to the Student Developer Pack. So we've opened app.py. And as you can see, it's a very basic amount of lines of code that we may or may not know what's going on with it. So normally we would go ahead and go through and try and line by line understand it ourselves, especially if we didn't know what Flask was or how anything worked. But this time we have Copilot to help us out. And so you'll see that it just says type explain after you've hit Control-I or Command-I to open up GitHub Copilot. And so I've done that keyboard command to pull it up. But before I do that and actually show you, /explain, if I could just do this. Personally, a way that I customize my Copilot experience and make sure that I really know what it is that I'm getting out of it is I'll usually select sections at a time to have things explained rather than just the whole file. Because if I selected the whole file, there's a chance that it may not explain things in the depth that I want per section. Unless you do want that overview, again, you can rerun it anytime. So you could also just say, well, I want the whole file, or I just want this function, and you can do that. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and select the whole file, and I'm going to go ahead and run explain. And so right now it's currently running this with inline for me, and it's using the references and saying, hey, this is a Python script. There's all this information about the functions and what's being done. And so I can actually just say view in chat or control down arrow, and it will pull it up on whichever side it is that I prefer. Sometimes it's on the right, sometimes it's on the left. It'll be here in this little box. But I can scroll through and I can keep asking it questions on the current file if I wanted to. So I might even, ask a follow-up of like, can you tell me more about routes? I've never heard of them before or something, or like, what's a Python decorator? And so on. And so if I wanted to see the code in action, and this is how we're going to actually prove this code actually doesn't work, and we'll find out why in just a moment. But there are multiple ways to create a terminal. You can use Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P to say create terminal. In my case, I'm actually going to just do Control-, which will open a new command prompt for me. So that way I can access to that. But again, Control-Shift-P will, and then Command... what was it? Open terminal, create new terminal with profile. There's plenty of different ways to do it. Depending on what your needs are, of course, you can type in the appropriate thing, where this is just, let's say, it's Control-Shift-P. Come on. And then create terminal. So I could also do this. And so now we have a command prompt versus a Python terminal. Different ways to do it, depends on what your preference is. But we'll now go ahead and type in pip install -r requirements.txt, and that's referencing this file here on the left. And so the reason we're installing this, that Copilot may or may not have told you about, is that we need to make sure that we have the same files that this project is using. And so this might actually break depending on what version of Pythons you have on your desktop or your laptop. Like if I was running this on my Mac, I would actually have to run pip3 in order to run this. And so right now it says that it couldn't install the packages. It can't actually find the files that it needs. So for me, I actually have to create a virtual environment to run this, where we'll do that very quickly. I think it was, it's like, I always forget virtual and I always have to Google this. It's something else. Command. I'm just very quickly Googling this because you would think I would remember this by this time, but I clearly don't. Python-env, and I'm just going to call this env. And so now I have this. Hello? Is there a reason that you didn't activate it? Come on. Is there a reason? Okay, don't know why that wasn't cooperating, but then, so now that I have this environment, I can go ahead and activate it. So I'll need to go env/scripts, wrong slash, you can tell I've been on a Mac recently, scripts, and then activate. And so now I have an environment that I'm using to run this instance of Flask. This is Python specific. I wouldn't stress too much about not being able to have this specific part of it running. If you don't have the criteria I just ran into where it worked perfectly, you don't have to do this. But obviously it did not work for me. So we're going to go ahead and do requirements.txt. I forgot. -r, right? And sometimes this doesn't quite work anyway. There we go. So now things are installed where it says the requirements are already satisfied. I didn't get an error this time. Yes, it's updating, but that's fine. And now I'm going to go ahead and try and run this application with a Python. Let me like shrink this a bit. So python-m flask run debug. And so no module named Flask. Come on. Why are you like this? Sometimes I can run it with just Flask run. Let's see. Goodness, it's not cooperating with me today. Well, what I can do at least is show you that this is eventually not going to work, where it's actually going to give us a type error output. And it's going to tell us, hey, like, there's a lot of information where it's failing on these functions, and it's going through the traceback and letting us know that there are obviously issues. And let's see. I'm also debugging on the side here, just trying to see if I can get why it's not cooperating. It might be because I didn't actually run that Python command. I was being stubborn. This is what I get for that. But that's okay. Create terminal. Yeah, it's not cooperating with me. That's okay. We can still make this work. So with the type error, we may not know what that is, especially if we're new to coding. We may not be like, maybe it's 2 a.m. and we're like, oh my gosh, this hackathon project is due in 6 hours. I just can't have another error right now. And you're very overwhelmed, or something happens that it's just, you're not able to process all this information on the screen. And so with it being broken, now we're like, well, now what do we do? How do we proceed? How do we process this, especially when we're not in a capacity to do so? And this is where Copilot can step in, really shine as that AI pair programmer that we mentioned earlier, where in order to fix the error, which I already know what the error is, there's a chance it may not give us the right fix, and that's okay. There are some ways around it, where we can use Control-I to open up GitHub and type fix like we did with /explain. Let's see. Let me see. In the meantime, I'm very quickly just seeing if I can't get this to run really quick. Gosh. It's just not finding my Flask instance for some reason. Normally this works, but then again, I have it all properly set up on my laptop, so it is what it is. This does happen from time to time. But let me go back really quick. We'll try one last time. See if this works here. I got it working. All I had to do was use a different command. But let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. So it's telling me that there is completely different errors. But if we go ahead and look through our response, we have the server started. I said, okay, let's go open up that link, that 127.0.0.1/5000. And it does say, here's this type error. And again, 2 a.m., you're going to look at this and you're going to be like, nope, I quit. I'm done. I don't want to do it. It's not happening. So let's go ahead and close out of the server. Control-C to quit the server. And going back to app.py, we know that something is broken with this type error thing. So what we could do is, again, use that, that sheet that I mentioned when you select things, where you might know, like, hey, this type error is somewhere in one of these returns. I don't know which one it is. And so I would use Control-I/fix. And so if I was worried about it not giving me the correct answer or not having the right context, even though I've selected things, what I can also do is give it a small prompt and say, I have a type error or type error. And maybe I could hit enter there. But first, let's see what it gives us if we just use a /fix. And so it actually does tell us the correct thing right now. I have had it in the past where sometimes it'll tell me, hey, it's because you didn't import the time library. And it's like, but I did. It's right here. The time library is right there. Right there. I don't need to import the time library. So AI is not perfect. And so in order to best guide it to the direction that we want it to go, of course, selecting, giving it the prompt of type error or type error and some other things will help give you a better answer that is more accurate. The other way around it is if you forget or something happens or you and your friend or other people on your hackathon team are debugging, you might have them all run Copilot on that same section of code or the same file, trying to see if anybody gets a different answer. Especially when you're working in a team, it makes it very helpful because then you can all run at the same time and see, who gets the best answer that's most explanatory that ends up fixing the problem. So in this instance, they're telling us it's actually because the seconds function should return a string. It's currently returning an integer, and so we'll just have to convert things. And so as you can see, it's casting it right here. So I'll go ahead and accept this, where we now see, hey, okay, this one was converted to integer. I wish I knew what type epoch was when I get the time. It looks like it returns a float, so that's why it's being cast to int. And then now this return of this function we now know gives us an integer, but we actually need a string in this route with how it's returning things. And so there's different places you could do it, and this is where you can start, picking apart all the different recommendations that it gave you, where maybe instead of putting the string cast here, you might replace integer with string. And then it might be a floating point number instead of the integer, in which case we might want a nested conversion. And then maybe you want other things, of course, so you might, fiddle around with it. So this is where, Copilot has given you one thing. How do you expand on that to understand and make sure that you can apply it to others? So we'll leave it as is. We're going to go ahead and hit save. And we're going to rerun that Flask app. We're going to go ahead and hit refresh. And so if I zoom in a bunch, you can now see that there is a time here. And if I refresh, that should change. And that's the time since epoch or epoch, depending on what field you're coming from. But continuing on, there's still plenty of things that we can do with it, which is now that we have fixed the error, gotten our timestamp, what if we wanted more things? What if we wanted to create additional routes in that Flask app where we wanted to show the hours or the minutes? And so there's two ways that you can go ahead and generate code. And so I can start by saying, hey, Copilot, generate the code and route for hours since epoch. And if I hit enter, it's thinking. And so now it's given me hours since epoch. And it also, so not only did it give me the function, but it also gave me the route that I need in order to see it if I wanted to choose the /hours route. However, maybe it wouldn't hurt to just double check the math that it generates. I've personally been a little bit affected by using Copilot, wildly. And sometimes I need to double check its math because AI is not the best at math just yet. We are getting there. But since it's, this could actually be giving us minutes or hours or days or, whatever. And so as you can see, it also gave us some weirdness where it tabbed in and we didn't really need that. So let's go ahead and tab that back. And now things are valid again. And we could hit save and test this route out and it would give us the hours. Now, what if, I'm continuing on and you can see that it's already prompting me here where it's giving me a main function, but I actually don't want that yet. I want a minutes example of generating code where I can go ahead and do that, where I can start creating the route for minutes, where I might say at app.routes, parentheses. Right now it's giving me hello. I actually want minutes though, so we'll go ahead and type in minutes and let's see if it will give me that. So as you can see, it says define minutes. We can take the hours since epoch and multiply it by 60. Again, presuming that math is correct. And we just have to hit tab to finish auto-completing. And so sometimes it might, prompt you immediately like it did where it was giving me the main function for Python. And sometimes you'll have to type a little bit more for it to recognize that you're trying to add in another route. So different ways to do things, multiple ways to interact with it. But again, being mindful that as you are auto-completing, that you are double checking, like, does this math make sense? Am I doing anything redundant? Basically cleaning up your code as you go so that way you can prove to yourself that you have gone over the code, you have made sure that it made sense. So that way when you do find the bug later on, you can go, oh, I guess I missed that. Or, oh, no, you caught the bug right before it happened, in which case, yay, everybody's happy. And so other things that you can do with Copilot is, like I said, you can explain code, you can explain on a single file, a single function, you can have it generate things, you can talk to it as you would in the chat window. But as you've seen, Copilot sometimes makes errors. It doesn't exactly write the best code. It is trained on humans, and we are not the best at writing code just yet sometimes, especially with the amount of us who are in our learning phase, and we will never stop learning. And so it also has code samples up to fairly recently, but we are getting farther and farther from 2021. So it may not know about new libraries and APIs. So as I've said, reading through the code and making sure that you understand what it's doing really helps make sure that you are reducing the possible bugs that could occur, as well as ensuring that you have good quality code that you're feeding back into Copilot as they're continuing to train. So if you'd like more resources, I'd encourage you to check out the various guides. There's Copilot guides, Copilot examples, and Copilot configuration to make your experience more customized to the things that you need. But as a quick way to wrap, Copilot is somebody that you can add to your team. It's there for you at 2 a.m. when the mentors have gone home, or there's no MLHers on site, and you just really need that extra bit to push you toward that successful point. Sometimes I find it's really helpful in helping me figure out what question I need to ask a human. Because I don't quite understand what it is I'm asking. And rather than say, well, I don't know, and not asking them or saying, please help, but I don't know how, I can better guide my questions toward the relevant person by being like, well, I looked at this and then I cross-referenced with this, and this is where I'm stuck at now. What do you think? And so there's lots of ways to, again, interact with that and leverage that. So with that, I'll go ahead and leave those resources up. But let's see. That's a pretty good question. There's lots of folks who are wondering about whether technology is replacing junior or entry-level developers. And to be honest, I don't have a clear answer on that. I would wager no. Generative AI and various other AI platforms do not have human context and do not have empathy like we do. And as a result, there's still value in bringing in humans to the workplace. Particularly as we pursue accessible design and other projects that, pursue the good things that are out there that should benefit others. And so I don't know that it will ever truly replace everyone at this time, just because, again, we've not figured out a way for AI to have the full nuance, the human experience, if you will. And so I will say it is certainly harder these days to get these jobs. Junior level jobs have seemed to have disappeared in favor of having entry level. You stay there long enough and then you move into some form of senior position. That's at least what I've seen in my experience. But like entry level is still very valid. You still need folks. You still need to train up folks, because how do you get senior devs if you don't train folks from the start? And so I'd place a little bit of faith on the fact that as you expose yourself to coding, as you get better, there will be a point in which you are a very experienced developer and you can skyrocket through entry into a senior developer position. AI can optimize, but I think it still needs human guidance. Is the best way I think I would answer that. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Well, since I'm not seeing any questions, I'll remind y'all to sign up for the GitHub Student Developer Pack if you'd like access to Copilot for free. I'd also encourage that you check out the resources available, especially to customize and make your experience that much better, which would help you become all that much better of a developer. And I guess that will end early. I actually thought that Flask bug was going to knock us out for the stream, but just needed to run something differently. Which that's actually something as well that you can ask Copilot, is like, how do I run this Flask app? No, not yet. So the create your first recommendation system part 1 did have to be delayed. And so I'm not sure when the new one is. I think Jocelyn was the one who was running it. And so she made a new announcement about when the first part would be. So if it's not upcoming before her part 2, then that might actually be the part 1, in which case you're good. You didn't miss anything. And she'll have a makeup stream for part 2 to make up for the fact. She had a school assignment and it was very much in the way. So she had to unfortunately delay her stream. But you didn't miss it. So I'd say if it's not on the YouTube yet, then it's probably because it hasn't happened yet. Let me go pull up the announcements and see. She made an announcement delaying it. So it looks like she'll have her part 1 stream in about 7 hours, according to her announcement yesterday. And then I believe the part 2 will be rescheduled appropriately. So you're good. You didn't miss it. Alrighty then. Well, thank you very much for joining. I know we've had a very busy morning of back-to-back-to-back streams, or at least I've had a very busy morning. But who is next up? Next up is actually UT in about 30 minutes with part 3 of his Finance with Python. And then we have Kari a couple hours later with how to better use AI in your hackathon. And then I'll have a mini event for Tetris. So lots of good things coming up. Don't forget to check in for the events that you are interested in attending. Make sure you get those points, and I will see you all when I see you. Enjoy the rest of Global Hack Week. And yeah, thanks for joining.